Weekly.com. I'm Bill Gross, the LA probate expert, and we do this every Thursday, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Talk about all things probate real estate, whether you're an investor, wholesaler, real estate agent, paralegal, attorney, accountant in the probate space. We love to get together and talk about how we can help each other. We get some referrals. Most importantly, they'll learn and be able to better provide for our customers so we create more value so we can increase our income and make more money. Sometimes we have guests, sometimes we just have different content we exchange. I'm not selling anything here today. I'm really just here to educate and network. I need to network with the other providers around the country. I have a national team of probate real estate agents currently in California, Georgia, and Florida. We're looking to add other states. If you're interested, let me know. Towards that, I'm really excited to have a special guest today who I met because there's still a very large probate activity and trust activity in other states, and in particular North Carolina. And I came across this lady, Ashley Palmer, who is a CPA and a paralegal and does a lot of work in the probate and trust administration she's not an attorney as opposed to litigation. But for those of us that's involved in real estate, oftentimes administration is getting a house ready for sale or selling a house or helping our customers. So I'm really excited to have here from Raleigh, North Carolina,
Yes.
Ashley Palmer. Hey, Ashley, how are you doing?
Thanks. Great. I'm so glad to be here. Someone says to raise your volume. I think.
Me raise my volume?
Yeah. Someone in
Really?
the chat said that.
How's this? Testing 1, 2, 3. Is that better? Testing?
Yeah,
No?
they did a thumbs up.
Okay, good. Okay, yeah. I have to talk to the microphone to think of what they're saying. Fancy microphone, but you got to talk into it or it doesn't work, I guess. So, okay. So actually, you're from Raleigh, and you are CPA as well, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Which is a big part of probate and trust or accounting. We'll get into those issues. But let's go back in time at the beginning. Where'd you grow up? How'd you get into working in trust and probate administration?
Yeah. So I did grow up here in Raleigh, and I think you interviewed my boss, Jason Walls, earlier this week. And he and I and a few others at our firm seem to be like practically the only native North Carolinians anymore these days.
Wow.
But all right, so let's go back in time. So it was Christmas Day, 1985. I was 7, my sister was 4, my mom was 35, my dad was 38. After we opened presents, my mom had to tell us some very sad news that our father and the love of her life had passed away early in the morning after a 2-year battle with cancer, a kind that is fortunately now curable. Her bank accounts were frozen. She had never written a check to pay a bill because dad handled that. And so the advisors in her life, the lawyers, CPA, financial advisors, were key in helping her to have the mental wherewithal and resources needed to raise us and send us to college. So a few years out of college, I kind of fell into this job at another great firm. I just knew someone there. I liked it, but I thought it was a dead-end job, and I was young and upwardly mobile. I wanted to be CEO at the time. And so I quit to go back to school and get my master's in accounting at UNC Chapel Hill, go Heels. And I became a CPA, and I did the audit gig for many years. But I always remembered my job at the law firm as the best job I ever had. It was because I was helping people through a very difficult time. And there was no like helping or making a difference for people that I was auditing, as an internal auditor. So even though some of my audit clients said they like to see my smiling face coming, everyone just didn't really like seeing us. And so 10 years later, almost to the day, I went back to that same job at the same firm. And I've been doing this work now for the last 9 years. And I absolutely love using my quantitative skills to help people through one of the most difficult times in life, the loss of a loved one. And so I feel that it is my calling and mission in life to help relieve the burden of the probate paperwork from grieving people. So that's my story.
And it comes across, I think that, when I first talked to you, for those of you who know me, my main coach in probate is Chad Corbett, Probate Mastery, formerly at alltheleads.com. And really he's made this business, his tree of the probate business to be about having empathy. And I'll be honest with you, as a man in general, I'm not the most sensitive and empathetic. My wife will tell you if I call her in, she'll testify under oath that I'm not as empathetic as I should be. But I work at it in this business, and partially because I've lost both my parents and through our marriage, lost both my in-laws. So I've been
Wow.
through that process 4 different times. And I've seen it from a bunch of different angles. And then now I've lived longer to see it through other people as well. And I started to become a resource for them. And it drew me into it. And I see that come through you as well. So here you are. Normally you think of a CPA with a little green hat on and numbers and the 10 key with your hand without looking at it. But here you actually enjoy this part of it, which involves your numbers. But so what does the majority of a day for a probate administrator or trusted administrator doing this on behalf of other people? You're not doing it for your own self, but you're doing it for clients. What's a day look like? What's the kind of activities that are normal for you?
Sure. So, it ranges from, client intake, doing an initial meeting with someone, figuring out the nature of the decedent's assets, liabilities, and family structure. And then all the way to filling out those forms and paperwork to submit to the probate court, having the client sign it. Like, for example, today I had a client come in to sign an inventory. So there's like 3 phases: initial qualification, inventory, and then accountings. And so I had the client sign an inventory today. We also had we had a fair number of signed and ready to go filings. So I worked all afternoon on getting those filings out with my newest coworker we just hired from our local estates court office. And so she's a great help. So we are checking each other's work, making sure everything looks good and it's what the court wants to see, and getting those out and mailed or delivered to the court.
Now I'm going to ask questions sometimes that might be considered private. If it's company private or proprietary, feel free to not answer. But about how many cases do you file monthly, and about how many do you have in your caseload on a monthly basis?
So our caseload is about 50 to 55 estates right now, 10 trusts, and a handful, like 3 to 5, maybe guardianship accountings. So after someone gets adjudicated incompetent, the accounting process is pretty much the same for a guardianship as it is for an estate. So that's about how many we have right now.
So at 50 active cases, and that means any month you're filing
50 to 60. We probably did, with basically each case has at least 3, sometimes more. We probably had, I don't know, it seems like 10 filings go out this month, maybe like.
So this is important for real estate agents. And I often get a question, well, what does this have to do with getting listings as a realtor?
Mm-hmm.
Learn what your clients are going through. And if you can solve the problem better, you become the solution. And listen to what she's telling you. She's telling you that she's filing 10 filings a month, maybe 4 new cases a month, at 50 at a time that she's administering. When you meet an attorney or you have a client who's going to choose an attorney who does 1 every 3 years, how could they possibly know what to do compared to Ashley and her assistant production line it has to be to do that kind of paperwork? And so I really want those of you real estate agents or investors or families to think about when you choose somebody. I have all the time real estate agents call me up and talk about a case. The client's talking to an attorney. I'll pull up the case, and that attorney just happened on Monday. 1 case since 2017, 1. How can you know what to do in a business that changes so much, law and just in general? So thank you for sharing kind of those numbers for us.
Yeah.
Let's go back and cover a couple definitions. So as I understand it, guardianship is when you have somebody who is below the age of competence, or legal age, I guess, right? Below 18 years old?
A minor. Yep.
A minor, there you go.
Or an incompetent.
Mentally incompetent of some sort.
Mentally incompetent. So if someone is getting adjudicated incompetent, there has to be a hearing, there has to be a GAL or guardian ad litem appointed for them. Like I said, a hearing is usually held. The court considers basically all the evidence and then makes a decision on whether the person should or should not be adjudicated incompetent. And then basically all of their rights are taken away and their guardian takes over. But these are not I mean, these people can't do many of the functions of daily life. So a nicer way to put it that they've started using instead of incompetent is adult ward. So that means an incompetent person. It just sounds better.
And does that include conservatorship, or is that different? Conservatorships in California?
It's basically the same thing.
Got it. Okay.
Yep.
So California, we have like three different. We have the regular probate, and then we have a guardianship would be only for minors, and
Okay.
conservatorships would be for any adult.
Okay.
And in essence, a guardianship could pass into a conservatorship based on age and such.
Right. Well, yeah, so it's all the same. It's all guardianship. But it's either of them. So you don't have to get adjudicated incompetent if you're a minor, because you're a minor. Just by your birth date, you don't have competent,
Right.
yeah.
Or people who are mentally competent or physically able, that maybe they're in a coma, God forbid.
Mhm.
So do you ever act as the fiduciary for estates? Do you act as other states where you become the administrator petitioner and act on behalf, or are you just doing the work on behalf of the petitioners?
The vast majority is that we represent the personal representative or the trustee or the guardian. We are not guardians of anyone. We might be the trustee on one and the executor on one, maybe two. We actually have a case where some UK, United Kingdom solicitors reached out to us because they had an American, lady who was born in America, moved to London, lived there most of her life, passed away, but she left assets in North Carolina in the United States. And so because they can't serve, because a non-US person is not allowed to serve in North Carolina as executor, even though that person is like their version of a CPA in the UK, they can't serve just because of the rules. And so one of our attorneys is going to serve in that capacity.
But that's not your general practice as a business.
It's not our general practice.
Now, in California, there's attorneys where that's their business. Like they are either, they solicit attorneys to appoint them as fiduciaries for a trust or guardianship or probate. There's certain attorneys, that's their job, that's their business. And I think for real estate agents, those are really great sources of business, because if all you do is represent various estates, guardianships, conservatorships, you're regularly involved in those decision process. I would say in LA, those are the most competitive people to get business from, because for that same reason.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I would also just interject with, referral sources, almost all of those cases, estates and guardianships, if they're an adult ward, then they usually are having to sell a home to put them into a skilled nursing facility of some sort. And so it usually involves the sale of a home through the guardianship process. And then also an estate, sometimes the family members want to live in the house, but a lot of times they just want to sell it.
Right.
So a lot of those represent sales, of houses.
Okay. So let's see. And so the real estate would be sold through probate unless they're going to keep it. That would be true for a guardianship as well as a regular probate case. Now, are there cases in North Carolina where properties have to be sold and the court has to confirm it and there's an overbid process? Does that happen regularly? Is that a rare thing? How does it happen in North Carolina?
Yeah, so by default, when someone passes away, let's just say, mom is widowed and she's got 2 adult children. When she passes away, by the laws of intestate succession, and she's got 2 children, then it would just immediately vest in the beneficiaries as of the date of death. So they could and should immediately start taking over the bills, paying them themselves, or the rental income is now theirs. The expenses and the income are now their own. So I think that's different than California, because it sounds like I was listening to the interview with my boss, Jason Walls, you did earlier this week, that in California, all real property goes through probate. Is that correct?
Well, not husband, wife. And not if they're deeded together, right? If you're deeded,
Okay.
father and son on the deed, that's
Joint.
different.
Okay.
But if it's just father on the deed or mom and dad on the deed and mom and dad are deceased, doesn't matter who's alive left. If they're gone to transfer to children, it has to go through probate,
Okay.
unless
So
there's a trust.
that is that. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Unless there's a trust. That same here. But well, if it's a trust and it's in the trust, then the trust owns it and carries on or whatever. But the in North Carolina, by default, it just goes straight to the heirs. If she had a will, then it would go to those beneficiaries.
Right.
So if she had the two children and I don't know, a cousin or something, then it would be split those three ways and they would be the owner. And so they can sell it themselves personally. They may need the executor or administrator, the personal representative, to sign off on the sale, just to say I don't need this in order to pay claims. There's a couple of scenarios where an estate is brought back in to real property is brought back into the estate in order to pay claims, but it's the prerogative of the personal representative as to whether that's in the best interest of the estate or not. So the situations are guardianship. If there's, minor or incompetent, you have to petition the court for possession, custody, and control. And then it can be sold. So that involves a hearing, a petition, the court, and an order, and all of that. And it usually has to go through the upset bid process, which is a physical posting at the courthouse, on the courthouse steps, basically. And people have 10 days to upset bid that. And it's 5% or $750, whichever is greater. So on a $265,000 sale, the upset bid would be about $13,000, right? That's 5%.
So we call that overbid in California. Same
Okay.
upset bid. Interesting.
And the clock starts, so it has 10 days to be upset. And if it's not upset, then that person wins. And we just had one win on Monday. So that will basically be processed through the court they will have to confirm the contract for sale, and then that will be, then it will be sold that way. The other scenarios where that would come into play is insolvency. So if the estate has $20,000 and its debts are $80,000 and there's some equity in the house that could pay those claims, then we would recommend that the PR petition the court to bring the real property back into the estate in order to sell it. Same upset bid process happens. Another couple of scenarios, the will can grant the executor the authority to either must or shall or can sell the property. So sometimes the will says that my executor can sell my property. And so you don't have to go through that petition process to bring it back in. The other scenario would be if there were fighting beneficiaries and nobody could decide what to do with it, it might be in the best interest of the estate to just sell it. If everybody's fighting over the baby, then just sell it to split the baby, or I don't know. We've had some situations where we've had to do that before.
So you're in Raleigh, which is what county? Queens?
Wake County.
Wake County. And I imagine it's one of the biggest in the state. Any idea how many upset sales there are? How many times that opportunity exists?
I do not know.
I happen to track all of those in LA County. Literally my goal is every single one. And so I accumulate statistics, but I don't think there are very few people who know that answer in LA for sure, unless you specialize in looking at those properties to buy them, which you're not doing that. You're just selling them as they come up. Does it seem to you to be a regular event? Does it seem to be abnormally irregular?
The special proceeding to bring the real property in?
No, the upset bid.
Well, I mean, it's basically the same thing, right? The special proceeding involves the upset bid process. So to bring the real property in, I would say we might have 5 or 10, so maybe 10% of our estates have that process. The rest of them either, the heirs are just keeping the property, or they sell the property themselves because they can.
So I think in LA it's about 10%, but 10% of 500 is 50. And, I don't know how many in your county, if it's 200, 10% could be 20 a month of opportunities. So the real estate people might want to take a look at that and dig a little deeper.
I do know some other kind of stats that I recently looked at. Our county has 1.1 million people, and there's about 5,000 estates open per year in Wake County, as contrasted by one of the smallest counties in North Carolina, where I have done a probate proceeding. There's like 5,000 people, and I'm pretty sure my file number was number 6, and it was opened mid-year, so they might have like 20 estates in a year. So really,
that's off the stamp there. Pull the
But
spider webs off of it.
We are tied with Mecklenburg County, where Charlotte is. We're about the same population and estate case, roughly, I think.
It's very difficult for me when I talk to somebody from North Carolina not to flash back to Mayberry RFD. So that was my sense of what North Carolina looks like. Yeah, I should more imagine Michael Jordan and Carolina Panthers, but I still think of Mayberry RFD when I think of North Carolina.
Well, Amazon and Apple are coming, so I think we're going to look just like California soon. Our real estate market is crazy right now.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if being like California is good or bad, but I'll leave that for you to judge. Tell me about the records process in your county. I'm sure it varies in every county. How accessible are the probate records as far as finding out who the petitioner is, maybe their phone number or contact information, who the attorney is? Is that contact information available if there's real estate or not, or is that something that's guarded?
Yep. So all of our files are public record. And so anyone can go into the court office to look at the file itself. So anything that's publicly available, which, the petitioner's information would be in there. And then kind of the nature and extent of the assets would be ascertainable from the inventory. A real property is listed, but it's not like, it's listed as property, which can be added back to the estate if it's needed to pay claims via the special proceeding and upset bid process. So it is listed there. Also, all of our real property records are also public. Deeds are public, and like the tax information, basically, and the ownership and when it was bought and sold and for how much is available online. And so, typically when we get a new client or potential client, we know with the county that they live in, we just do a quick search for their name and we can see what they might own there. It depends. I think, some of the really the client, Hyde County out on the Outer Banks of North Carolina with 5,000 people. I don't know if their records are online or not. They may or may not be, but they are available at the Register of Deeds to look at.
Yeah, California has a wide variety from LA, which is as big as it gets and up to date in technology. And then we have, remote counties that are in mountain areas where there's 5,000 people and same thing. So, but
I've looked for real properties for a decedent who died in North Carolina and owned properties in other states, and it's not publicly available. I had to email, and you basically you have to have a legitimate reason. I had to say, I'm, working at the law firm that represents the estate of this person. We suspect she owns something around here, can you confirm? So is that yours aren't public? Is that correct?
California, I think all counties are. I'm not 100% sure, but I think because the nature of their tax system, and it just seems like the nature of California, I believe you get public. I know there's a whole slew of counties that I have access to. I'm pretty sure, as far as the real estate public records are public. As far as probate, it varies by state, by county. Some are available online, some you have to go in person, some aren't available at all. There's a wide variety by county on probate records within California.
So they are public then?
Well, certain information is public. Like in LA County, you can see the first page of the petition for petition for probating an estate. And the first page of any document that's filed in a case, you can see.
Mm.
So sharp attorneys will keep all the private information on the second page and at least make somebody pay to get it. And then in trusts and guardianships and conservatorships, it's a little more private. It depends. There's different levels depending what the judge agrees to. But generally, you can see a lot of the information in almost every case in California, in Los Angeles County, and Orange and San Diego, for example.
Okay.
I got asked a question, do I see an increase in or decrease in probate filings in LA County? And Christopher, I can't say I did a mathematical significant analysis of overall filings, but I will say it's been pretty steady. I don't notice month to month, I pull 500 this month, and there might be 600 or 400 depending on holidays and seasons and such, but it seems to be about the same as it was 2 years ago. How about in North Carolina? Your population's growing. Is the probate and trust business, the number of filings growing? Of course, a successful firm, you might feel like it is, but that might just be what you're getting. Do you have any sense overall about the court?
It does feel like it. I think it's probably, population driven. And so we are a growing county. And it does seem like I'm so glad we just hired a new person a few weeks ago, because we're just slammed. I don't know what I would do without her. We just got real busy all of a sudden, it seems like. So,
I noticed we had big news about the federal statistics on gross domestic product, GDP, was down for the first quarter. And what they noticed was certain states are up and other ones are down. And I believe North Carolina, Tennessee, Florida are just booming. And other states are starting to feel the effects of the transition. So,
yeah.
Contact information, we'll put Ashley's contact information in the end of the show notes.
Okay.
But she's affiliated with WallsLawNC.com. Walls Law Group is the group, and the website's WallsLawNC for North Carolina.com. And on there, you'll see a picture of her, and you'll see little forms and phone numbers and all that kind of stuff to get in contact with her. So some other questions.
Oh, Bill.
Okay, we got Zoom bombed and somebody got in. Oh, man. It's always something.
I think that was my first Zoom bomb.
We had a tight security. I do like this to be participative, but because we've been getting Zoom bombed.
Bill, shut up and kiss me.
Quandale. Okay, so let's hold on one second. This is just.
Oh, Lord.
And we don't let them change their name anymore for the same reason. And if you're on, Jess, if you can catch. There we go.
My name is Quandale Dingle.
Yeah, Quandale. Thank you so much.
Shut up and kiss me.
He needs to get a life.
Yeah, well, it is really sad. And then we'll let them change their name, so hopefully he can't come back in. Okay, sorry about that. I've had cases we put on pornography, and they have, incredibly vulgar audio. I mean, it's just been crazy. But I think we have that now locked down. So what are the fees to prepare and file a probate paperwork from beginning to end? And then do you serve as administrator, rep? I think we talk about that generally. That's not their business. They've done it, but not generally. So if the family doesn't want to serve, then you would have to hire somebody else. And what would the fees be for that fiduciary to handle? So what's a common probate cost between the court fees and then third-party vendor publication fees and such, and then your company fees to administer?
Yeah, so it's $120 at the probate court to open a file, and then it's $4 per thousand based on the value of the assets in the estate, anything that comes in. So it's like a tax on what you have, not what you owe, but anyway, on what you have. And so, but it's capped at $6,000. So you won't pay more than $6,000 in probate fees. And that's like upwards of 1.5 or thereabouts $1 million. And then the notice to creditors is in the $100 to $200 range. The filing fee, the minimum filing fee for an inventory or an annual account or final account is $15. Are you gonna write these fees down?
No, I got, this is just crazy.
Okay. All right. So, and then as far as legal fees, we bill on an hourly basis. We find that it's roughly, and this is, so it's on an hourly basis. So it's a case by case basis. So it really depends. It could be less and it could be a lot more, especially if people are fighting or there's lots of issues. We find that it's about $2,000 to $3,000 in legal fees per phase. So to get you qualified, it's about that much, and run the notice, and then to do the inventory, it's about that much, and then for every subsequent accounting until the estate is done, it's about that much. So, but if there's, we've got some accountings are 100 pages, that's that might be on the higher end of that range, or maybe even exceeding that range. There's some that are super easy and aren't they're like $1,000 per phase. So it just ranges. I would say to very average would be $7,500 to $10,000 in legal fees.
And what kind of assets of an estate is that average?
So we bill on an hourly basis, not a
Sure.
size basis like the probate court does, dollars per thousand, a percentage. Probably, and if they have litigation, that's more. I'd say our typical estates are between 100,000 and 800,000 or $1 million, thereabouts. Okay. Typically, that does not include real estate. So.
Okay. So, no, I mean, I think it's just the hardest part is we in the business kind of expect this is just what it costs and we're moving fast. And then the customers are, what? How much? I just tried to save 25 cents on a box of Cheerios at Costco, paying $1,000 for what? And I think that, it forces me to slow down and tell people, there's a difference between self-help and filling out the forms and getting professional assistance. I find that the most almost impossible for people to do on their own is accounting. Talk a little bit about what goes into trust accounting, and you must get customers that come to you and say, hey, I got 90% of the way there, but oh my gosh, the accounting is killing me. Can you help me? And they just bring you the shoebox and throw it on your desk and run out real fast. What's that look like?
Yep, we just got one of those out the door today. So in that particular one, it was a county. It's about 2 hours away, and they got qualified and did the inventory. But then we're like, we've been paying the real estate expenses out of the estate because someone told us to do that. And I was like, well, you can't do that, but we'll fix it. Don't worry. So we basically drafted some consents to fix it. So yeah, people, it's either too voluminous or they're doing things that are wrong, and it gets kicked back from the probate court because they're paying incorrect, nature of expenses like real estate expenses out of the estate when they shouldn't be. And so then they will come to us, and then it is kind of a knot to unravel. So the other thing I was going to say, kind of in answer to your question before about fees. So so for our clients that we typically represent, they can get up to 5% of the assets that come in and that go out with some exclusions, but they can get a commission up to 5%. So if it's $100,000 total that came in and then went out to pay bills, then, let's say we've got 80,000 in assets and 20,000 in bills, then they can get a commission of $5,000 on that 100,000. And that is solely in the clerk's discretion. So they can say, well, you had an attorney help you, so we're only going to give you 2.5% or whatever. Or, the legal fees, it looks like they did everything and you did nothing, so we'll give you 1%. But typically we do get the 5% for our clients if they want it, and it is taxable to them. But we I also make sure, I know what they've done, right? And so I list all the things that they've done in my petition for the commissions, for the PR. And so we typically do get it.
And I see that there's great variance, and one of the biggest variables is the more complete you are explaining what you're trying to get paid for, the more likely you are to get paid. And so there's realtors who will sometimes sit, just because they got the deal and they feel the family's dependent on them, they try to charge a higher fee than normal, and the judge won't allow it. There are other cases where I've had cases where we had to resell the property due to circumstances 2 or 3 times and had extra costs we had to lay out, extra work we had to do. And we documented it and put it in writing and signed our name to it. And the judge looks at looks at it and says it sounds reasonable. So I think it's important to have a professional help you with that. We got a question. I think this is from maybe your Facebook group, actually. Kendra asked, my client's aunt died intestate. He has been paying taxes on the vacant property for 12 years. He'd like somehow to file for possession. Is that something you can help with? Now, just a quick disclaimer, neither I nor Ashley are attorneys, and we're not giving legal advice. We're going to give maybe our business advice or experience based on our business experience in these fields. And off the top of my head, I can see where you might file adverse possession if you're living there and you're paying taxes, and or if there's no other heirs. But Ashley, is that something your firm can help untangle?
It probably is. It would be best if that person was basically the closest heir, or like the only heir, or maybe they have siblings, so they're in that like first class of heirs. Then we could certainly help with that. And I would just have to know a little bit more. I'd be happy to talk to Kendra. I know Kendra. So I'd be happy to talk to her more about the specifics of that.
Great. And sometimes realtors can act as a fiduciary instead of a commission, but get paid the same commission either way for doing the same kind of work. It's just a way to, at least in California, a way to kind of solidify your relationship. Kendra had another question. Kendra's going to get the award for best questions on the call today. She also asked, can you explain the widow's allowance? What's a widow's allowance?
Okay, yeah, sure. That's a good question.
She sounds like a ringer here, Ashley.
Well, she's our connection. She put me in touch with you. So
yes.
Yeah. So and I used to work for her years ago. So the year's allowance. So the year's allowance is available. Well, I'll tell you. It's called the spousal allowance, or the dependent child, the children's allowance. And what it's meant to be is it's meant to be, I think how it started out historically was, dad is working in the mines, or, a manual labor job, gets killed. He's got on the job or something. He's got a wife and small kids, and they have no way to support themselves. They, accounts are frozen or whatnot. So a spouse can petition the court. I reviewed one of these today as well, for up to the first $60,000 of personal property. And personal property is cash, bank accounts, vehicles, things that you can see and touch. Well, that's not a house or a piece of land, right? So that's real property. So basically all other assets, right? Coin collections, furniture, that kind of thing. So they can petition the court or just ask the court for up to $60,000 that's not subject to creditor claims. So the ideal situation would be if you had some creditors that the spouse couldn't pay or doesn't want to pay, and there's $59,000 worth of assets, she can get those first 59. He can as well. So it's a spousal. That's why I say it's not the widow's allowance, it's the spouse's allowance. So it's available to either gender. And then the children's allowance, they recently increased a few years ago, maybe like 5 years ago, they increased that limit from $30,000 to $60,000. But they did not increase the children's allowance, and it's $5,000. So
Wow.
that's not really gonna support a kid for a year. That number hasn't been changed in a long time. So the child's biological parent can petition the court or ask that, the first $5,000 also be given to the minor, and it can be payable directly to that surviving parent or guardian.
Well, our program is meant to be interactive. We had a couple Zoom bombers, but I think we got rid of them. We've locked out anybody from coming in at this point. So what I'd say is, if you'd like to ask a question and you're here, obviously you can put in the chat box, or if you know how to raise your hand on the reactions button on the Zoom app, or I'll say if you're on the video right now, if you want to kind of wave your hand, and I'll kind of look for anybody with a question. I'd be glad to unmute you. You can ask the question live, a great way. And I think the thing that Ashley offers us is a unique perspective of doing, a high volume of probate and trust administration work. She is in North Carolina, but I think you'll find that most of the principles she's talked about today, at least in my understanding, are similar to what we go through in California, with a couple differences. And I think learning those differences helps you understand your market as well. So I know I've gotten a lot out of it, but who has a question? Is it Bill 01? Bill, let's get you unmuted, and let's see what question you have for, go ahead and unmute yourself. There you go.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Great. It's nice to meet you.
You too.
And I'm in the great state of, or the great city of Statesville, North Carolina. So I'm your neighbor. I got a question though. When you talked about going to the office and seeing these, all the information that was available to you, and I understand the real estate part of it's probably all available through the registered deeds office. But are you talking about going to clerk of court's office?
Yes.
Particular clerk of court. Okay.
The clerk of court. Yep. And so the clerk of court here in North Carolina houses all the original wills. So the original wills go there after someone passes away to live forever there. So they're always on file.
Okay.
There, and you can see it. Yep.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Good question. Okay, who else has a question for Ashley? Again, if you want to put it in the chat box, I think we've covered most people. We put our contact info in there. If you want to raise your hand as a shortcut, or reactions in the Zoom call, or just put a question in the chat box. Anybody else? And I think we've checked we got your ringer, Kendra, nice to participate, out twice. But I know we've covered a wide variety of topics. So let me ask you a couple questions, kind of wrap up from a business point of view, Ashley. So I'm sure along the way, because most of the people on our call are interested in real estate, either investors or probably the majority are real estate agents, and would like to do business with you. Now, it's not just you, but let's say the you of other markets as well, other states and such. Mm-hmm. If you were going to advise somebody looking to build a career as a real estate agent and wanted to work with your firm, work with you to help the clients get the home sold, and in the course of that, list the property themselves, what would be the strategy you employ, or what tactics or what activities would you recommend them to employ to earn the opportunity to do business with your firm? And again, not just you in particular, but the bigger you.
Mm-hmm. I would say probably, networking opportunities of almost any sort where there's any kind of mixer, there's lots of professional networking opportunities, Chamber of Commerce. What's that really popular one? It's not B2B. It's
B&I?
B&I. That's what it is. That's a good one. I think because I don't know that cold calling would be the best way. It's like you kind of need like something in common, right? To meet somebody. So, and I think in groups like B&I and those kind of networking groups where you get to do a 1 minute to go around the table and talk, that I think is good. Also, just asking your network who you know or who they know that they could possibly introduce you to that works at an estate administration, probate firm, estate planning firm as well.
A couple other questions on that same topic. So if I happen to be a realtor where we're selling real estate and you're managing the probate or trust for whatever reason, and the client maybe has recommended me or suggested me, and you meet me and it looks like I know what I'm doing kind of thing. It seems to me that's the best opportunity for future business. That I go out of my way to meet you, that knowing you're a law firm, bring some food in the office, bring extra for the paralegals and the administrative staff as well.
Yep.
Do people do that? Is that an effective tactic? Would you recommend that? And with COVID where we are today, is it wide open to do that in your office?
I think COVID may have changed that, but I do think that is a great way in, for sure. And we do work with other, realtors who've come to us that way. There's one on the call tonight. So the client brought him to us, and he's learning the upset bid process. So yeah, I think that's definitely a good way, and it seems like most real estate agents, realtors are very responsive. So that is great. So I think, being responsive is also really good. But yeah, setting aside some time, maybe doing lunch with some of the attorneys or staff at the firm to get to know them better and how you can help each other.
You mentioned other work, because my father was an attorney. I used to work part-time in their firm when I was in college. And it seems like every attorney is glad to go out to lunch to meet people. That's like their normal. Is that true in North Carolina as well? Or is that just a California thing?
Yes, that's definitely true. We definitely look at that. It's like you got to eat anyway, right? So you might as well. It's just a more informal way to get to know someone than just sit in a conference room and talk about how you might do business.
And I've had real estate agents who tell me, well, my career I've done 10 or 20 probates, but I don't really know any attorneys. I said, well, next time you have a probate, find an excuse to go to the office, bring some donuts or muffins or something with you, feed the front staff, and then they'll say something nice to the attorney. Call the attorney afterwards. They'll thank you, invite them to lunch. That's, if you're any good, you're in the door at that point. But
there's nothing wrong with that.
Exactly. So I want to drop off donuts. Where do I take them to, Ashley? She's all, yeah, you can by right now. I'm hungry. Okay, good. And I think that's the fundamentals that we're all looking for, which is we overlook the business that's in front of us. And she definitely, I think all attorneys I've ever met are, once you've met them and they know that you're not an axe murderer, are willing to go to lunch. Women might be a little skeptical of men or vice versa initially, so you have to kind of deal with that. But once they realize you're not there hitting up on them, but it's professional, then you have a chance to do some business. The network she mentioned was BNI, which is a business networking group of some sort. And let's see. Here, Kelly asked a question. They buy leads, limitations in Northeast Ohio that says property can be sold for 80% or higher of the appraised value or tax assessed value. These homes are in bad shape. The PR wants to sell for less too, but the court says no. How hard and firm is the restriction? Is the commission of the states, and how can I get around this? So this is a good question. Kelly asks, and I'll kind of rephrase it. In California, it's 90%. So what happens is we order an inventory and appraisal report, which is an appraisal of the property, done not by a regular real estate appraiser, but by a special subset of appraisers called probate referees. And they're licensed, and there's a list of them publicly in California. And so when we sell it with court approval, only on court approval cases, which she called upset bids, what we call overbids, you have to sell it for at least 90% of that appraised value. And what Kelly's saying was sometimes appraisal comes in low. Typically, these properties are vacant, they're in bad shape inside, they might be really defective inside, but the appraiser typically is doing a drive-by, can't see inside. And so my experience, Kelly, in California is that we put it on the market, and after 2 or 3 weeks, we know the value, and I'll send the probate referee the comps. I'll send him or her the proof of the listing and the date. I'll tell them I've got any activity. I show the pictures inside. There's the nuclear bomb that's sitting there. There's the coke ring selling amphetamines or methamphetamine there in the middle of the kitchen. As a result, the property's worthless. And my experience is they'll adjust the probate inventory appraisal down and move forward. So I would say it depends on the judge. Like Ashley said, depends on you preparing and making your request known. Ashley, in your jurisdiction, on the upset bids, is there a percentage limit? And if the appraisal, no, there's no such limit.
No, so I have not ever heard of that. And it's fair market value here in North Carolina, as far as I know. So, we had an upset bid house that went a few months ago, and it was in horrific condition. There was a dead body in there for like 5 years. So
Woo!
it was really bad. And it started, the bids start really low. And me and the attorney and the realtor on it had never seen so many upset bids. There were like 10. And so it took 3 months, because at the end of the 10th day, it would get upset every time for 10 times.
Oh, wow.
And so it took forever. But we had one that's in good shape. The one we just, that bidder who won on Monday, that one was in good shape. It had one like solid bid, and to go above that really wasn't market value. So they got it. And, we preferred cash investors. And currently our market is one of the hottest in the nation. And so we can kind of ask for that. And as long as it's a fair price, it's kind of in that realm or range of what we think is reasonable, and it's a third party buyer, fair market value is fair market value. So that could be really low or it could be really high.
It is different in California. When you have the overbid, it's a one-time thing. So we might get 30 bidders that day. And I recently represented a buyer where we went from 900,000 to 1.25 million. It's a big chunk of money up.
Wow.
But, we have multiple bidders and for hot property, but it's a one time. And I'll just share for you guys, I always say you can tell the people professional in probate in trust. The rookies complain about the problems. The pros brag about them. If you saw her face when she talked about the dead body being there 5 years, that was like a badge of honor to her. Like, I've done so many cases. Here's one I have that was just horrific. Like, that proves that I'm good. And I'm with her like, darn, I wish I had a 5-year one. My longest was 6 months. So good for you, Ashley.
Yeah.
I'm kind of morbid, I guess, but
It was pretty shocking when we heard about that.
I'm interviewing a vendor who does those kind of toxic and post-suicide cleanups for real estate, hazmat, and he's a former fireman who got in that business and does that all over the United States, and he's going to kind of share some stories about what that looks like and those special needs. Well, look, we come up on our hour. It's been a pleasure, Ashley. I know you're busy, you're professional. It's late there at 7 o'clock, start time, 8 o'clock, almost now. Thank you so much for making time today to share your experience, and I think to help teach people here. As I say all the time, it's not just about getting business from the guests, but learning the principles, learning the attitude, and I think you see naturally a commitment to help the families and also commitment to be a professional and provide great service. So thank you so much for being with us today. And then in the chat box is her contact info, but again, she's with the Walls Law Group, which is Walls Law NC, WALLS, Law, LAWNC.com. And if you go on there in the front, there's a phone number link and there's a contact link. And then if you go to the About Us, you'll see a picture of her. And the picture's got a huge smile. And I think you're wearing the same outfit that you have on today. Or maybe that's your standard professional photo look. But looking very professional there, Ashley. I'm impressed. I would do business with you based on that. Thank you so much for being with us today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you all so much. I really appreciate it and your questions.
And we'll come back in next week. We do this every week, probateweekly.com. We do it Thursdays, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. We live stream it on Facebook and YouTube. We also record it there. If you have questions there, I'll catch up with them. Thank you so much, everybody, and make this your best week ever. Thanks so much.